we are, most familiar with the Egyptian and the Greeks, and their mythologies are so rich with happenings and ongoings and cities and people and gods that live and inhabit under the surface of the earth, that it's so much so that I really don't even have to talk about that, just enough to mention it so you remember that this is not something that just came up in the 1800s. This is not something that we just talked about last century and are carrying it over into this century. No, the history is rich. Cultures all over the world. It's not just, like I said, in Egypt and in Greece, but a lot of the Native Americans here, a lot of the Aborigines in Australia, even the Eskimos. If you talk to the Eskimos and you ask the Eskimos, where did you come from? They all point to the north. And why the north? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. However, what you come to realize when you start seeing a pattern here is that there are beings that inhabit the inside of the earth, and they, throughout history, throughout civilization, have guided and misguided humanity, hurting us, moving us, shaping us, helping us, if you will, in all aspects of our lives. What you have to remember is, if you look at the ancient civilizations, like the pyramids, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, and some people just don't believe me, or they think, it just can't be true. However, we today could not build the pyramids. There do not exist cranes which can move the rocks from the interior of the pyramids. There is no way possible that human beings move these rocks into places. A lot of ancient architecture is so advanced that we could never duplicate it today, even with our technology. You have to remember, these ancient civilizations started off at a very, very high level and then began to decline to what we would think of as, in our ancient history, and then slowly starts to move forward again. So there was a lot of help going on back then that, for some reason, it just starts to drop off. And then there's a large gap in, the helpers or the visitors or the gods, if you will, that came and guided humanity. And then flash forward into the last century, and then we don't see the gods visiting us anymore, but then we start getting these alien encounters. Flying saucers and whatnot, spaceships, different types of alien races that supposedly are visiting from other planets or other star systems or anything, which I believe actually come from inside the Earth. So, going back to the literary record, and I want to really mention Jules Verne, because this guy, Jules Verne, and his books, almost every one of his books have to do with beings that inhabit the middle or the center of the earth. And the classic, of course, is Journey to the Center of the Earth. It's just a small book. It's been redone in many types of movies over the years. And when you think of Jules Verne, his parents, his father was a lawyer or aristocrat, so he was definitely involved in very affluent societies. I'm not quite sure. I don't know what occult groups or anything like that Jules Verne was actually involved in, but I'm willing to wager that his father, as a lawyer, was probably at the very least a Mason. Now that being said, it doesn't mean that all Masons believe the earth is hollow or anything like that. No, but I'm just telling you, once you get involved in one of these groups, it's very easy for you to fall into a different group. Just move, his books were in the middle, the middle 1800s. And then towards the end of the 1800s, you got Bulwer Lytton. And Lytton, they make fun of Lytton these days in England, saying, and they even have a contest, for the most verbose writing style out there. And, it's the Lytton Award, and, it's actually, kind of like a gag award or something like that. However, he wrote quite a few stories, and he's most famous, I would think, for The Last Days of Pompeii. In the occult circles, however, he's famous for Zanoni. But he has another book that is not so well known, and it's called The Coming Race. And this book is very, very interesting when we're talking about the hollow earth, or things that are going on inside the earth, for a couple of reasons. One is because he goes into great detail about some of the races that inhabit the interior earth. And not only that, this is where Vril becomes introduced. That is very important because Vril becomes a very, very important concept during the World War II. And the reason that's so important is because there are reports that the Nazis, some of the Nazis escaped down to Antarctica and tried to attack Rainbow City there and establish a base inside one of the openings of the Hollow Earth. And let me tell you this. And actually, we can start showing the expanding Earth. So go ahead and start from the beginning. As the Earth expanded, and then after the Great Flood, what happens is that there are two massive openings, one at the North Pole and one at the South Pole. And where there's no actual land there are huge craters or openings that go in to the hollow of the Earth. And we'll actually show you some of these holes from space. Not a lot of them, but just a few of them. And this is what you see here. And then in the 1940s, one of the most famous expeditions actually into the interior of the Earth happened from Admiral Richard Byrd. And he wrote quite a bit about it, and I will actually read some from his diary here. Let's see. That enchanted continent in the sky, land of everlasting mystery. I'd like to see that land beyond the North Pole, the area beyond the pole that is the center of the great unknown. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd. What is not commonly known about Byrd is that he actually flew a plane into the hole in the North Pole 1,700 miles